I'll never forget the day I stood on my dock, coffee in hand, and stared at 500 rainbow trout floating belly up in what used to be the clearest, sweetest lake in Montana. If you've never smelled 1,000 pounds of rotting fish on a cold mountain morning, count yourself lucky. It's a stench that hits you in the gut and sticks to your clothes for days. That was the day everything I'd built, my entire life, really got wiped out by a woman with too much time, too much power, and a grudge sharper than barbed wire. I'm Ezra Blackwood, by the way, disabled Army vet. Spent 5 years turning my grandfather's old ranch into a sustainable trout farm. This was supposed to be my second act, you know? After Afghanistan left me with half a leg and enough medical bills to keep vultures circling, I needed something solid, something that made sense. This lake was my chance. 5 years of sweat, research, and every last penny I could scrape together, gone overnight. So why am I telling you this? Because some folks out there, maybe even you, need to know how fast one person's hate can torch an entire community and how sometimes karma has a way of boomeranging back a lot harder than you'd expect. It all started, well, technically it started when my grandfather bought this ranch, but let's fast forward. 5 years ago, I inherited the place, including a 40-acre lake, so clear you could count the pebbles on the bottom. Most people would have called it a vacation spot, but I saw a lifeline. I threw myself into learning aquaculture, spent years wading through permits and paperwork, and finally, I had a thriving business. Fish jumping at dawn, the kind of mornings that make you believe in second chances. Then came the California crowd. You know the type? Moneyed, manicured, allergic to dirt unless it's imported. They called their new subdivision Willowbrook Estates, built on the old Tatum family's cattle pasture. 47 McMansions, every one uglier than the last. And sitting right downstream, those houses all depended on water from my lake, though nobody seemed to know that at first. That's where Delilah Thornfield enters the story. HOA president, compliance queen, and my personal nemesis. She'd spent 30 years in San Francisco hunting down violations for a living, and now she'd brought that same energy to Montana. Voice sharp enough to etch glass, permanent sneer ready to deploy at a moment's notice. She tried to join the local fishing club 3 times and got rejected every time. So when my fish farm started attracting customers, something inside her snapped. She wasn't subtle either. First, she tried to kill me with paperwork, covenants, violations, zoning complaints. Showed up on my property one morning in a suit worth more than my truck, waving a manila folder like it was a sword. Your commercial operation violates our covenant 4.7b, she announced, barely blinking. Wanted me to put up an 8-foot fence around the whole lake, 40 grand, just to ruin my view. I told her as politely as I could that her HOA rules didn't mean squat up here. She smiled like a shark spotting a bleeding seal and promised to bury me in lawsuits. 30 days, she said, or else. She kept her word, I'll give her that. The mailbox filled up with so much legal garbage, I started using it to start my wood stove. County inspectors, environmental reports, nuisance suits, anything she could file, she filed. But here's the thing. Veterans get used to bureaucratic fire. I had my permits in order, and the county inspector, Jake Morrison, turned out to be a fellow service member. Once he saw my setup, he laughed. You run this like NASA runs a spaceship. When Jake filed his report, he called out Delilah's harassment, so clearly it became part of the public record. She'd picked the wrong guy to mess with. But Delilah wasn't finished. She brought in private security, 6 wannabe cops in black SUVs, acting like they were raiding a drug den. She strutted out, barking orders, snapping photos, threatening to educate me about compliance. I called Jake, put him on speaker so everyone could hear, and within half an hour, he showed up with 2 real deputies. Those guards packed up so fast they left tire marks. Delilah's face went from smug to murder in 30 seconds flat. From there, it just got weirder. She set up a blockade on the county road, posted guards, turn away Billy Redstone's fishing clients like they were bank robbers. I tried to reason with the guards, but their leader, a guy named Derek whose neck was thicker than his IQ, just shrugged. HOA business. Ma'am says whole area's private now. Problem was Billy's guide service brought in folks from 3 states, making it a federal offense to block access. Delilah had no idea she was crossing into Commerce Clause territory. Her next move? The nuclear option, a nuisance lawsuit, demanding I shut down my operation and pay $50,000 for community disruption. 23 pages of pure fiction. She was betting my disability check couldn't handle the pressure. That's when fate sent me an ally. Emma Vasquez, a local reporter whose ex-husband had fought the same battles. She showed up with a photographer, right as Delilah's goons turned away a disabled vet and his grandson. The story blew up. Photos of heartbroken kids, angry parents, and my trout farm turned into a national talking point. Delilah was losing her grip, and her own HOA treasurer, Margaret Wu, called me one night. She's about to dump chemicals in your lake, Margaret whispered, sounding scared. 40 pounds of copper sulfate, she said, enough to wipe out everything. 3 sleepless nights later, I caught her on my wildlife camera, kayaking across the water at 2 in the morning, dumping blue powder into the depths. The next day, the carnage hit. Dead fish everywhere, the stench of death and copper thick enough to make you gag. But karma, as they say, is a patient hunter. Turns out the same water Delilah poisoned with copper sulfate flows through limestone caves and feeds the Willowbrook estate's wells. 6 weeks, that's how long it takes for a chemical dump in my lake to show up in their morning coffee. Emma, never one to miss a twist, brought a hydrogeologist to map the whole system. Dr. Foster showed me the data. Every drop those folks drink starts right here. And copper doesn't just disappear. It clings, bonds with limestone, poisons slow and steady. The EPA limit is 1.3 parts per million. My lake was testing at 47. We documented everything. Pictures, video, chemical reports, purchase receipts. Delilah even used the HOA credit card to buy the copper sulfate. When the time came, I set up a demonstration at the annual HOA meeting. 2 aquariums, one with clean water, one with water from their wells dosed to match what was coming in just a few days. 6 healthy trout went into each tank. Within minutes, the ones in the contaminated water went belly up. The crowd lost it. Shouts, gasps, people calling doctors and lawyers. Delilah tried to slip out, but the FBI agent in the room stopped her cold. Arrested for environmental terrorism, bribery, and endangering public health. You should have seen her face when I slid a glass of her own poisoned water across the table. If it's safe for everyone else, have a sip. She couldn't do it. Couldn't even look at it. Cleanup was chaos. FEMA trucks, emergency water supplies, media circus. Delilah went to prison 7 years, plus nearly $3 million in restitution. Marcus, her husband, got probation for testifying against her. Willowbrook's HOA dissolved, replaced by a new environmental cooperative focused on transparency and sustainability. Turns out, when disaster strikes, neighbors find ways to help each other. My lake eventually healed, with restitution funds and some help from the Federal Victims Compensation Program. I rebuilt bigger and better, started a foundation, hosted fishing clinics for veterans, even launched a festival that brought thousands together to celebrate environmental recovery. Kids learn about ecosystems, veterans find new purpose, and the water sparkles cleaner than ever. There's a lesson buried in all this, and it's not just don't mess with a disabled vet. It's that the people who crave power the most are often the ones who understand the least about how things actually work, whether it's water, land, or community. Delilah thought she could control everything from behind her desk, never stopping to wonder where her own drinking water came from. She poisoned herself trying to destroy someone else. So what do you think? Have you ever dealt with someone so obsessed with winning that they ignored reality? ignored consequences until it all came crashing down? Tell me your story. Let's hear about the time karma paid a visit to your neighborhood. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that justice might be slow, but when it arrives, it's as clear as spring water and twice as refreshing.